Thanks for joining us here today. As our MC said, I'm Traci Gusher. I lead AI and data for Ernst & Young, and I'm thrilled to be joined on the Brand Innovators stage today by Rebecca Kent, who's truly an innovator in her industry. But Rebecca, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Traci. It's great to be here. So I'm SVP of Transformation at Warner Brothers Discovery. And at the moment, we're really focused on innovation and seeing what we can do with data and a lot of the emerging technologies coming out at the moment.
Fantastic. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to Rebecca about this topic today is that there's so much buzz in the emerging technology space across industries and certainly in media and entertainment. And one of the things that I think has impressed me so much about the approach that Rebecca's taking to innovation is how important and centered the use of data is. And as we know, there's just an explosion of data from a lot of different sources, and WBD specifically has some really interesting and unique data compared to some other sectors. So I'd love to start, Rebecca, on the topic of data and innovation with how is Warner Brothers Discovery seeing this opportunity emerge and really focusing on it as a driver of innovation?
So it is a really interesting time at the moment for media entertainment, and we have so much more data than we've ever had before, and that is really exciting, but can also be kind of overwhelming for a business such as ours. If I take performance data as an example, when this industry started back with the advent of cinema, really the only data signals we had to determine how well something was performing was cinema sales tickets and perhaps critic reviews, but even then, sometimes critic reviews don't actually tell you how much a wider audience is going to respond to a piece of content. So that's all we had to kind of say, is this piece of content, is this film performing well? Fast forward to kind of today, we have so much more performance data at our disposal. So we still have cinema sales tickets, but we also have, in terms of streaming, we have subscriptions, we have view-through rates, we have clicks, we have TV ratings for television, we still have critic reviews, but now we also have audience reviews online that we can read, we have social media sentiment, we have experiential ticket sales, and so we just have so much more kind of data at our disposal to kind of determine how well something, just looking at performance to determine how well something is performing. And so it's a really exciting time. But we are in an industry that is quite traditional. So sometimes for some diehard kind of traditionalists out there, it can be overwhelming to have so much data.
Yeah, and if I think about just, like you said, the breadth of the kind of data you have, the sources of data, you have, like any other company, you have internal data sources that are fueling the enterprise operations itself, then all of this content data. And when I think about just how overwhelming that can be, what strikes me is, how do you sift through all of the different opportunities that this data can provide, and really, how do you determine where the value is? How do you determine where to place your bets?
Yeah. That is a great question, because it can be overwhelming with the amount of data out there. And there are so many opportunities to use that data, particularly with emerging technologies coming out at the moment. And there's a lot of noise around as well. So a lot of, we could do this, we could analyze this. So I always like to anchor it back in, what is the business problem we are trying to solve? Or what is the business opportunity that we see? And then when you anchor it back to that, some of the kind of cool things you can do with data, or some of the new emerging technologies, when you anchor it back to, is there something to solve? Often there's not. It's just a kind of nice to have, or that'd be interesting if we could analyze that. But when you bring it back to what are we trying to solve for, that really focuses you, I think, on, okay, let's make sure that we're collecting the right data and we're analyzing, we're using the data in the right way to solve this specific problem. And so that's what I always like to kind of bring that back to.
Yeah, and I imagine that is a really complicated task for a business like yours, just given the diversity of the businesses under the Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella. There's a lot of different businesses, and with that, a lot of different opportunities and probably a lot of noise in where those opportunities are. If we think about the use of data broadly, there's been a lot of buzz, I think, in particularly the last year, around how data is being viewed by and or used, or there's concerns around the use of data as it relates to the job of the creatives. And when I speak about the job of the creatives, the media and entertainment industry is fueled by these amazing creators. And there's been a lot of concerns, I think, in the industry on how will the use of data affect their jobs and what they do. How is Warner Brothers Discovery thinking about the job of the creative and how data will be used by them or influence their jobs?
So Warner Brothers Discovery is a creative-led company. Without our creatives, we don't have an output. And so we're very kind of aware of that, and we're very respectful of the role of the creatives in our industry. And so it's really up to the creatives to decide how they want to use the data. This doesn't apply for other parts of the business. So if you're in finance or you're in kind of other areas, you must use the data and you must kind of follow what the data signals are telling you. But our creatives have more freedom. So it's really up to them to decide kind of how they want to use the data and if they want to kind of use it at all. And it's because there is something really beautiful about a creative organisation, and those of you that work in creative organisations, I'm sure, feel the same way, in that all the data signals in the world don't necessarily mean you're going to have a great product. So if you're getting lots of data signals in that vampires are really hot right now, and that lots of people are having vampire content, vampire films, vampire TV shows, you might go, great, all I need to do is make a vampire show, and there we go. But that does not at all mean that the audience, by the time you make it, will want the vampire show, that it will be any good. And so data in terms of creativity, the more data signals does not necessarily mean a better creative output, because creativity is subjective, but also it's an art. And so that's why very much it is up to the creatives to determine how they want to use the data that we have at their disposal. And I think that's what also makes it interesting. We're not creating a widget. So I think that all the kind of data in the world, and you can do lots of prediction analyses, you can do all these things, but they don't actually tell you until the thing hits audiences whether they're going to like it or not.
This to me is what's incredibly fascinating about your organization is that there's a lot of other companies and a lot of other industries that look at historic data of their products, and they can build predictive models on, and there's recipes of if you do this, this, and this, then it will be successful. And entertainment doesn't work that way. It's just, it is completely different. And like you said, you can still use that kind of approach in your back office types of functions like a finance or talent organization, but when you try to push it into the creative space, it feels unnatural.
Yeah, and it is unnatural, right? And because our creatives are artists, can you imagine telling a painter, sorry, we have all this data that says this is what you should put into your painting. Like, you just would never do that. And so it's same when we're creating film or creating TV shows. We can't tell the creators what they need to put in it for it to be successful.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. So I think regardless of where you're using the data, whether it's in the creative process or it's in back office or anywhere else, certainly one of the things that we hear of a lot of organizations across sectors, but really very, very impactfully in the media and entertainment space, talk about the complexities of risk and legal around the use of data. Certainly the landscape of data privacy and data security is something that every organization is concerned about. And we've seen different types of regulatory and legal types of regulations that have occurred, certainly GDPR in Europe, and that very quickly turned into CCPA in California, and now I think 20 other US states have already adopted some very strict data privacy rules. That the whole landscape of using data has become extremely complex. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of legality around it. So particularly with an organization like Warner Brothers, that is, the brand itself is known to us as consumers so well. When you're thinking about using that data responsibly, maintaining your reputation, how do you navigate that legal landscape? It can't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, naturally. And we have we want to abide by all those regulations that you mentioned, particularly when it comes to our consumers and our consumer data. So we work very closely with our cybersec teams, we work very closely with our legal teams whenever we want to use data, particularly customer data. But it's not just customer data we're concerned about. Obviously, we're concerned about copyright as well. We're concerned about our talent. So there's a lot of different considerations that we have to take into account when we're looking to use data in our organisation. And really the way around that is having fantastic kind of guardrails and making sure we have guidelines in place. It is about having a close dialogue with our legal teams. It is about being really aware of cybersecurity and having an awareness of that and working closely with them. But because, as you mentioned, the legal landscape is changing so rapidly, you also can't kind of set and forget those guardrails. So they also need to be revisited time and time again to make sure we're up to speed with the latest. And we operate all across the world. And so every market is different in that way. And then you have states on top of, in some countries, on top of country laws. So it is really complicated. And the only way I think anyone can kind of work around that, or work with that, I should say, is by having that close dialogue with their legal teams.
Yeah. And I want to cue in on to something that you connected there, which is the interaction with not just legal, but with your CISO, with your information security professionals, other compliance organizations. It's not just about one connectivity point, right? It's an ecosystem of internal operations that have to come together in order to really ensure that the way that data is being governed, the way that it is being utilized is done responsibly, and it's no one person's job, right? I have conversations all the time with chief data officers at organizations, and many of them are saying, I don't know what my job is anymore, because is it data governance and management? Is it responsible use of data? Is it driving value from data?
Probably all of the above.
And it probably is, right? But even they have to be in this ecosystem of connectivity. And on that point, a lot of the chief data officers that I work with that are working with innovators like yourself are telling me that one of the things that they are getting pushed on is to be able to show value from data. And like we talked about earlier, there's a panacea of information out there that could be used for different ideas and opportunities, but where is the value coming? If we look at the media and entertainment industry and we think about what are the exciting things being done with data that you're seeing tangible value out of?
Yeah, there's a couple actually that I'm quite excited about. One is definitely around personalization for our customers. And so with more data out there now, with more emerging technologies, how can we really create a wonderful, curated, personalized experience for our customers? And this is particularly where we have direct relationships with our customers, like with Max, with our streaming product. How do we create something that's really going to be personalized to them, that is curated for them? How do we make things easier for them? Where are their frustration points? Every streaming service has an issue of discoverability. How do we kind of surface the best content for that individual? And so data is definitely the way to kind of help us. And now that we have so much more data at our disposal, how do we use that to create personalized experiences? And you mentioned earlier that we have a lot of different business units within our company, which is true. So how do you take someone from streaming and understanding kind of what streaming content they like to consume, also to what kind of in-person experiences do they like, and how can we get them to visit some of our studio tours, for example? Or are they also a gamer, and how do we connect them to kind of what gaming products they might like? So that, I think, is really interesting, and that we can do with the new data available to us. Then there's a whole nother set of data that was never previously available to media and entertainment companies, and that is data directly connected to our content. And so if you think Warner Brothers has been around for 100 years, so we have this incredible archive of content that sometimes is sitting digitally, sometimes is sitting on reels, like physical reels in archives. Now with kind of new technology, we can turn that into data. And that is really exciting. So if we can turn this content into data, we can start doing things we could never do before. So other industries can search their products. So if you're a bank, you can search up how many customers do I have, what's their churn like, how much on average do they have in their bank accounts, all this kind of stuff. When your product is content, it's video, you can't search so easily your video, right? But we can now with new content, with new technology, we can turn that content into data. So for example, I'd love to be able to search how many films has Warner Brothers produced that have beach scenes in them? I'd love to be able to search that. We can't currently do that, but we will be able to do that by turning that content into data. And that's exciting. And you're probably thinking, why on earth would she want to know all the beach scenes that Warner Brothers has produced? It's good for marketing. Think about when we're trying to create marketing assets and we want to create different sizzle reels. It could be something around a particular show. Say we want to create a sizzle reel for all the times Joey in Friends has said something. We can do that when we turn that into data. And that's exciting.
Yeah, and where my mind immediately goes to is both on the personalization front as well as on the broader marketing front, just the speed and the accuracy improvements that you can get to, right? So, your example of every time, Joey and Friends, said, "How you doing?" Right? The amount of time it would take just normally to sift through the content without it being a data source is inordinate. Mm-hmm. And with it as a data source, it completely changes the process itself as well as the impact and the speed that you can get to in that area. And I just love the focus of using data for personalization. I think a lot of consumer products companies have been using data for personalization for a long time, right? So, what kind of makeup would I like? What kind of shampoo or conditioner? Those kinds of consumer products that are part of our everyday lives. Personalization in that area has been around for a really long time, but it's so different when it's content. And knowing what I like from a content perspective and how to curate and personalize that content to me based on my likes is just a different ballgame than any other industry.
It is, and because content is so subjective, you can get to some extreme nuances of people's personalization. And so even sports, right? You might be an NBA fan, but you're probably an NBA fan of a particular team, usually. So that doesn't mean you want to be, some people want to be surfaced to all NBA content, some people don't. Some people only want to be surfaced to their team. Or we have a lot of wonderful lifestyle shows under our umbrellas. And talking to people who are huge fans of like HGTV, for example, when you speak to them, that doesn't mean they like all HGTV content. There are people I've spoken to who are like, no, I love the flipping shows, but only when they flip the houses in the countryside, or I love the cooking shows, but I like the competition cooking shows. I don't like them to tell me how to make stuff. So you get into some extreme nuances about people's personalization that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. So obviously, your role in innovation is evolving with all of the advent of being able to use all of this different kind of data, unstructured data, content data, structured data, and if I'm in your shoes. This is not an easy road, right? Innovating and like I said before, not your job, but I hear a lot from chief data officers that they are being pushed to create value. And I feel like there's so much to learn and that there's a lot of both success stories and lessons learned that innovators like yourself have seen as you're navigating this data landscape and trying to figure out how to drive that value. So if you're speaking to other innovators that are looking to really drive value and innovation from data, what are the one or two just pieces of advice you would give to those that are trying to drive innovation from data?
Yeah, again, back to that value question. I think it helps to know what problem you're trying to solve for or what opportunity you're going after. And then I think you need to start small, particularly with a company as large as ours. that has so many different brands, and we spoke at the top about the lots of different types of data we have, it can get overwhelming quickly if you're trying to solve for everything. So if you have a particular data need and you think, great, imagine if we could use this, and then you start thinking, oh, but I'm going to have to use that across all our different brands. Oh, hang on, all their different data is structured. All the data is structured differently. What a customer means in one part of our business is not the same as what a customer means in another part of our business. So sometimes a customer means an individual in a particular business unit. Sometimes a customer means a household. Sometimes a customer means an account, which could have multiple users, which may not be in the same household. So it can get overwhelming pretty quickly. And so I think starting off small, start small, but build for flexibility, I would say. So if you start small and say, I'm not going to solve for all the business units, I'm going to solve for a particular business unit and a particular use case, but build it with the flexibility that it could then be rolled out wider to more business units if you find it successful.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I've seen a lot of organizations take a similar approach and have, micro innovations that turn into macro value, especially when we think about rapid experimentation and identifying that. I think that it's a great roadmap to build upon. And one of the things that I've seen a number of organizations struggle with is when to pull the ripcord, right? So innovate, small in 5 different places, but realize that as promising as this one idea sounded, as cool of an idea as it was, the value's just not there. And so, we're in Vegas, right? You can't be pot invested. Yeah. you have to pull your chips back sometimes. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with that.
Yeah, you've got to go in with that mindset. If I'm going to do 5 different kind of pilots, go in with the mindset that they're not all going to work. So then I think everyone's kind of aware that you may have to. If they all work, fantastic, and then it doesn't matter, you kind of undersold and over-delivered. But if you kind of let everyone know they are pilots and they may not all work, then at least hopefully you've laid the groundwork so it's not as hard to pull back.
Pilots dual usage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the entertainment industry, there's a lot of pilots that never turn into TV
Yeah, we are
shows,
kind
right?
of used to that idea, I guess, in our industry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we just have a few minutes left here, Rebecca. Any other last pieces of advice, crystal ball moments, anything that you would give other innovators like yourself, ideas or watch outs for as they're trying to enter this space?
Yeah, I think particularly for, I guess you all work for complex businesses. I feel like all business is complex at the moment. But a watch out or a thing that to be aware of is the more kind of complex your business, the more different brands you have within your business. Back to that point about what is a customer, it can be hard to kind of share data across. Sometimes you're not even allowed to. There's limitations on how you can share data, but also kind of understanding the data governance and what your data conventions are. And so to me, I'm in the innovation space. I want to move quickly. I want to see results. Everything moves too slow for me. But I am aware that there also needs to be a process of cleaning up that data and having proper data governance and making sure we're all using the same data conventions and making that data accessible across the business. And so I feel like I'm trying to go 100 miles an hour, but then I'm also having the brake applied to me a little bit. Yeah. Which is sensible from people like chief data officers who are going, hang on, we need to kind of clean up this data. We need to make sure we have our conventions.
Slow down to speed up.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So that's been a learning for me, I would say. And to anyone else who's in the innovation space, you're probably the same. You want to move really quickly. Why haven't we seen results yet? That's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. Okay, fun final question. Not about data, not about data or innovation. So amazing amount of content under the Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella. And I'll answer the question first so you have 10 seconds to think about it. Your favorite show, movie, game, experience under the umbrella. Mine, hands down, not even close, Game of Thrones. Complete addict. Watched it like 6 times end to end by this point.
Do you like House of Dragons?
I do, and I can't wait for season 3. So what's yours?
I mean, it's like choosing your favorite child, right? So I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone from Warner Brothers here, but I apologize in advance that I have to pick a favorite child. But I really enjoyed the White Lotus series from HBO, and season 3 is coming out this year. It's set in Thailand. I cannot wait for that. I think it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. That's a great content. And I have to say, I said Game of Thrones hands down, but Friends will always be in my heart. So, all right, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us here at Brand Innovators, and congratulations on all the amazing innovations that you're leading for Warner Brothers Discovery.
Thanks, Traci.
Thank you.